Hi, everyone. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Okay, good morning, everyone. I think we'll get started. I know there's some people that are still joining us, but I'm Jody Monroe, I'm the superintendent, and I want to introduce the other staff members who are here this morning, so they'll give a little wave. We have Joanne Menrath here, who is our nurse coordinator for the district, Diana Reagan, our principal at Eagle Elementary, Dave Rounds, a high school teacher and BCTA president, Dave Domel, our high school principal, Joellen Gardner, our communications specialist, who will be facilitating the Q&A session, Dave Hurst, our assistant superintendent for the district as well. And I believe Mike Klugman may be joining us. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. What I'd like to do is do an overview of our reopening plan as I'm going through the presentation. Feel free to add your questions in the Q&A, and then we'll follow up with trying to respond to as many of them as possible. It does look like we have a little bit smaller group today, so hopefully we'll be able to get to most everyone's questions. So I'm going to share my screen with the presentation. It's not allowing me to share. It says who can share, only the host. I don't know if I can change that. Let me try that.
Jody, do you want me to try and share?
Oh, it let me do it now.
Okay.
I changed the settings, so I think I'm good. Okay. Okay. So with our reopening plan, we do keep in mind our mission statement and our core values of academics, character, community, and wellness. So today, we will review our reopening plan, and then we'll be able to respond to any questions that you may have. If we don't get to all the questions, we are putting together an FAQ for the questions we've had in the other forums as well, to try and respond to as many of the questions as possible. So we are still awaiting a decision by Governor Cuomo. He did indicate that sometime this week he would let us know a final decision about whether schools will reopen or not. We did submit our plan to State Ed and the Department of Health by July 31st. And we are planning a hybrid model with a remote learning option. So this includes both a remote and an in-person instruction model. We did prioritize our in-person instruction for our youngest learners and students who have additional needs. And we are providing families with a choice for remote learning only. On July 13th, the governor indicated that schools would open if our infection rate was 5% or below on a 14-day average, and we would remain closed if the infection rate was 9% or higher on a 7-day average. Health and safety is definitely a top priority for us, as I'm sure it is all of our families. So we will be requiring daily health checks, which is a component of a temperature check, and a few online health screenings that students and staff will be required to answer before reporting to work or school. We are also asking that face coverings that cover both the nose and the mouth will be required to be worn in school buildings, on school grounds, and on transportation at all times unless there's a medical condition that would prevent that. We are setting up our facilities with 6 feet social distancing in all directions and in 12 feet social distancing for areas such as physical education, choir, and band. And then, of course, as much social distancing as possible on school buses. This gives you an idea of what a setup might look like in our classroom. You can see that desks are spaced 6 feet apart in all directions. And if you have the teacher work area in the front, although it's set up with 6 feet distancing, we are asking that masks be worn because the teacher will need to move around and students will likely need to get up and move around as well. So that is the reason that we're using 6 feet social distancing as well as masks during the instructional classes. Health screenings, I did indicate that we would be asking everyone to complete these daily. So you would do a temperature check. We would ask anyone who has a temperature of 100 or above to not report to school. All staff would complete this daily, and we're asking families to also complete it daily. We are looking at an app that will be easy for everyone to access. We will be restricting outside visitors unless there's a safety issue or well-being of students. Parents and guardians will be required to pick up and drop off their child outside if they need to do so during the day. And any visitors who do need to be on our campuses will have to wear a mask and follow all safety precautions that are in place. You've probably heard a lot about PPE or personal protective equipment. So students and staff will be, as I mentioned, wearing face coverings that can be brought from home. We'll talk a little bit more about those. We will also maintain a supply of disposable face coverings. We recognize that they may get damaged or soiled during the day. We also will have gloves, goggles, face shields for some staff who may need to work more closely with students, for any student or staff who will need it. We will also be encouraging frequent hand washing and review with students what proper hand washing is, as well as hand sanitizing. So we are purchasing hand sanitizers that will be installed in every classroom and common areas for when hand washing isn't convenient. We also will be talking about appropriate respiratory etiquette. We will also be doing increased daily cleaning, as well as our custodians have been trained in specialized and responsive cleaning. We will be cleaning high touch points several times a day, and teachers will be assisting in disinfecting the classroom, particularly the desks in between cohorts of students. Some examples of where we would be cleaning and disinfecting more frequently: our restrooms, our health offices and isolation rooms, any frequently touched surfaces in common areas, cafeterias and kitchens. The classrooms I mentioned, we would be cleaning and disinfecting between cohorts of students, in our buses and school vehicles. So all staff will be trained on how to spot signs and symptoms of COVID. Everyone who's been working here this summer did complete the training. It is an online training. Anyone who presents with symptoms would be directed to the building nurse for the nurse to evaluate and determine if that individual should go to the isolation area where a student could be dismissed to their parents and be evaluated. One of the components that we need to be mindful of is that if there is a positive case of COVID, we would be working closely with the Albany County Department of Health to assist them with contact tracing. So it is important for us during the school day that we're able to track where students and staff members are. Some other infection control strategies. I mentioned social distancing. that does limit the capacity in buildings. We're looking at our buses being at approximately 50%. Student arrival and dismissal, we're looking to stagger some of the times to limit congestion as well. We are increasing the flow of our outdoor air through our ventilation system. And we will be enhancing that flow of air to approximately from 10% to approximately 22%. We do also have some plastic separators currently in our offices to create a barrier. We also are looking at some separators that can be used for instruction, again, for students and staff who need to work at closer proximity. So what happens if a student or staff member has symptoms of COVID-19? That person, we do have procedures in place where the school nurse would be notified, and the school nurse would then evaluate that student or staff member and provide them with guidance to contact their healthcare provider and dismiss them to a parent. If someone does test positive for COVID-19, again, we would collaborate with the Albany County Department of Health. So the district would notify them, and we would work with them to assess where the individual had been while they were on our school campus. And the Albany County Department of Health would then provide us with any guidance as to what we needed to do at the district. So as I mentioned, we are providing a hybrid model of instruction, which prioritizes in-person learning. So you can see that the students who would be here 5 days a week are our K through 6 students. We are planning on having our special education students who are in our intensive skills and skills programs, K-12, also our ENL students, and we're evaluating if we can have our career and technical ed students who are in the high school in daily. 7 through 12 would be on a rotating every other day schedule. So if their students' last names started with an A to a K, they would be on site in the middle and high school on A days, and students whose last names are L through Z would be on site on B days. When they're not in our school buildings, those students would log in from home for their daily schedule and participate in class in the remote environment. Families will have a choice if they want to opt for a remote option only, and I'll talk about that the different levels in just a minute. So we are proposing to phase in our students and staff as we return back to school. We have 2 staff days prior to Labor Day, so the week before. So following Labor Day on the 7th, on the 8th, we will have 1 more conference day in order to allow our staff to have any professional development that they need, make sure our technology is current, and any other training we need to do. On Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we would do remote instruction for all students. So we would have a schedule for what students needed to do on those 3 days. One of our goals for those 3 days is to provide students with instruction on things such as social distancing, arriving to the building, what the hallways would look like, what the classrooms would look like. So when they arrive the following week, they're prepared for what some of the expectations will be. The following week, on Monday, we would have students on site who are A through K, that would be K through 12. Students who are alphabetically L through Z would participate in a remote learning that day. And on Tuesday, we would have the A through K students participating remotely, and L through Z would be on site. That is, again, to help us transition with reduced numbers of students, particularly at the elementary level those 2 days, to help with arrival dismissal and movement around the building. Beginning Wednesday the 16th, all students would be on site, K through 6, and 7 through 12 will continue following their alternating day schedule. The start times for all our building, the only building that has changed, and this is a result of the school start time committee, is our high school. All other times for buildings remain the same. So I mentioned arrival and dismissal. This is still a work in progress, but what we're anticipating is that we will be staggering our parent drop-off and pickup at our elementary schools to reduce traffic congestion, and also to reduce the number of students entering and exiting the building at the same time. We're currently thinking that about a 20-minute time frame where we might have half of our parents, if we use the alphabet, for example, drop off within a certain 10-minute window, and the other half the following 10-minute, so not to conflict with bus arrival and departure. At the middle school, we're asking that parents do not drop off students prior to 8 a.m. When students arrive, they will have to go to their homeroom. They can't hang out in the foyer or the auditorium as they've done in the past. Dismissal will likely be staggered either by grade level or location in the building. And for the high school students, we are asking parents not to drop off prior to 7:45. Again, those students, when they arrive, will have to report directly to their period 1 class. And we're looking at, again, dismissing students by potentially locations, wings of the building. We will still have our schools out programs in all of our buildings, so that will be available for families still. So our K-5 model, K-5 students, we are planning on having on-site every day with the social distancing protocols in place. We are planning to use our RTI math teachers to reduce class sizes and allow for more direct support for instruction for all students. And our special areas, art, library, music, and PE, will primarily be push-in models, and choir will not be offered at the beginning of the year. Sharing of materials and supplies will be limited or not permitted. If we have to use supplies with different cohorts of students, they need to be disinfected between use. We will have movement and mask breaks into the school day. We currently have a subcommittee working on recess. It will be scheduled, and we will have activities that are safe and provide social distancing. Lunches will be served in the classrooms, and we are encouraging our staff to use outdoor space, weather permitting, and to the extent possible. So we are still working on our models for remote learning. It is available to families who choose not to send their child due to health or safety concerns. This option will be a mix of video conferencing lessons provided by our faculty through either Google or Zoom, and independent learning opportunities. The model really depends somewhat on the number of families who want remote learning. Our model 1 that we think is what we will offer currently is available, where students will be assigned to a classroom, and our faculty who have in-person instructional duty will be the classroom teacher. So a student would log in the morning to participate in the morning meeting and beginning of the class, and then much of what they would do would follow a schedule that would be different during the day, and I'll talk about that in a minute. If we have a large number of families who opt for the remote learning option, we do have a model 2 that might be available. Again, both of these are preliminary and subject to change, and it could be a combination of either of these. So in model 1, which we currently are planning for, I mentioned that students would log in, participate in the morning meeting, interact with their classmates, and then the remainder of the day, they would be following video lessons or pre-recorded lessons that some of our staff may do or we have purchased. So for example, in ELA, we use the Columbia Teachers College curriculum. They do have video lessons that are aligned with that curriculum, and also we have iReady. So this is what a schedule might look like. In model 2, if we have a large number of families who opt for remote learning, it might look a little bit differently, where the student would again log in the morning, but there would be small group sessions during the day with a teacher. This would be dependent on being able to not have certain sections of students in our buildings, or there could be a version between Model 1 or 2, again, depending upon the number of families who opt for a remote model of instruction. One of the big things that we did at the beginning of our planning is to look at our building capacity, because social distancing is important. This gives you an idea of the number of, or the room sizes that we typically have across the district, and with social distancing, about how many students can be in each of these rooms. So in our planning originally for elementary, we had planned on the number of sections, and you can see the ratios of teachers to students. By adding the RTI teachers, we added 9 additional sections across our buildings, and that helps to alleviate the number of students in any one section, which allows teachers to provide more individualized instruction and create a safer environment. So you can see that with the additional RTI teachers, when you look at what the original ratios were in the sections compared to the ratios now, they're much smaller and more manageable and create a safer environment. For our grade 6 students, we are planning on having them in every day. The schedule is going to change. However, it will be modeled similarly to an elementary schedule where students are in one cohort for the day, and teachers, although still teaching by content area, teachers would move to those classrooms, so students would remain pretty much in one location. In order to do this, we will not be offering world language, so those teachers will be helping to co-teach with a content area teacher to lower class sizes and also provide more direct support. The other change has to do with specials, that they will be scheduled like an elementary model. So students would receive library, music, and art once a week and PE twice a week. Again, PE, choir, and band do require 12-foot distancing. So this will limit the activities and how many students can be assigned to those classes. Lunches will be served in 3 large areas of the building with 6-foot distancing. And again, staff will be encouraged to use outdoor spaces to the extent possible. If students or if families choose not to send their children to school, there will be a remote option. Students from home would follow an assigned schedule, and they would receive some live instruction in the core subject areas. They would receive all non-core instruction through pre-recorded videos and assigned tasks. In our grades 7 through 12, I mentioned that we will be providing instruction on site alternating days. We would still follow the 9-period day for grades 7 and 8, and an 8-period day for grades 9 through 12. Again, PE, choir, and band do require 12-foot distancing, so that does limit the activities and the number of students able to attend on any given day. Sharing of materials would be limited or not permitted. Students will be assigned to a classroom every period. So for example, in the high school, in the past where students had what we refer to as free periods, that will no longer be the case. So they will be assigned to report to a classroom during times where they would have had free periods in the past. In addition, high school students will not be able to leave campus and return as they've done so in the past. So just to give you an idea of what some lessons might look like in 7 through 12, these are very similar to if you were on site in our classrooms, what they would look like. So one example will be that students are in person and students who are at home would log on to Google Meet or Zoom, and they would participate in a lecture discussion for 40 minutes, which is pretty much the class period. Another model may look like where remote students would log into the classrooms with their in-person peers. The teacher would provide an overview of what the activities are, and there could be some independent or partner work. So the students at home would be completing that during that time frame and then participate in the closing. At the end, there could be some homework time or some flex time to close the lesson out. There could also be a model where the teacher has all the students on site and students logging on from home, participating in a 20-minute whole class lesson. And then the following 20 minutes of the class period would be done independently, and the students who are at home would be submitting their work through Google Classroom. And then another potential model could be that each day the remote students still have to log in daily to the class period. The teacher would take attendance, and they may then use the 40 minutes to complete an independent activity or something that had been assigned previously and submit it either at the end of the class period or at a later date. This gives you a visual of what the 7 through 12 hybrid model would look like. You can see the teacher is in front of the classroom. The board is showing her presentation, and you can see there are students who are logged on from home who are participating in the class discussion. And on the opposite side, you can see the students who are in class participating, and they can see their classmates who are in a remote environment on the screen. This is available, again, to families who are concerned about sending their children due to health and safety concerns. Students would follow an assigned schedule, and they would receive live instruction in all their subjects except for physical education. And students may receive phys ed instruction through pre-recorded videos and assigned tasks. There's been some questions about students who receive special education. So in K through 5 and grade 6, students who receive related services would typically receive those either as a push-in model, or they could be pulled out with students from their same cohort. In 7 through 12, those students can still receive the related services. It could be done during a study hall, potentially, when they have time to receive those, or it could also be scheduled on a virtual day if it's a related service that can be done virtually. Resource room students would still receive their resource room either in the K-6 level in a cluster of students who are in the same cohort, could also be serviced in a pull-out or a push-in model, depending upon the IEP needs. In grade 7 through 12, resource room would be scheduled similarly to any other class period. So if it's a day that they are on site, they would receive their resource room on site. And if they are home in the remote schedule, they would receive resource room in a remote schedule. For co-teaching, they would still receive that in the classroom through K through 6 daily. And 7 through 12, they would receive those services on the same days, but they would be either alternating in person or remote. And I already mentioned that our skills and our intensive skills students, K-12, we are planning to have on site daily. There have been some questions about the difference between remote learning that we're offering versus homeschooling, so I just wanted to quickly touch on that. Remote learning is a choice that families who have health and safety concerns can opt into. Students are still Bethlehem students. They would follow a similar educational path and curriculum that their classmates are who are on site. It would be a blend of real-time daily connections with also self-directed work. And when the student returns to the classroom on site, their curriculum would have been aligned, so there'd be limited gaps. If a parent opts to homeschool their children, the student is no longer a Bethlehem student. The curriculum is determined and set by the parents, and they need to create an individual home instruction plan and submit quarterly reports on their students' progress to the districts. Students are primarily either taught by the parents, or many parents opt to purchase an independent online curriculum. And it does present a few more challenges in returning to the classroom because the curriculum is not necessarily aligned with the district's curriculum. So what we will be sending out later today is an information to parents asking that they let us know if they would like to participate in a remote only option. We do need that information for planning purposes for how many students will be on site and how many students will be in a remote learning option. We are asking that everyone let us know by August 15th so we can plan accordingly. So if parents opt to participate in a remote learning option, we are asking that parents commit to that for 10-week periods for our planning purposes and safety, adhering to the safety and health guidelines that we need to do so. So these are at the quarterly marks that align with the district's secondary quarterly reporting schedules. If a child is in a remote learning option, they're still responsible for participating in any district assessments and testing required by state ed. If a student is in a remote learning option, they do need to attend regularly. There is attendance requirements, there will be grade requirements. They have to complete all assignments just as they would if they were on site with the classroom teachers. Also, if you're in a remote learning option and students are not attending school, then any after school activities that may happen, none are planned currently, students cannot come on site to participate. However, if we are able to offer co-curricular activities virtually, students who are in a remote environment could participate in those. There currently are no fall sports scheduled. They have been delayed until at least September 21st. If they do happen, we would follow the Department of Health and State Ed's guidance. I mentioned co-curricular activities will only be allowed if they can be done virtually, and we will not have any after-school buses at the middle and high school to begin the school year. We are encouraging parents to transport their child when possible. We understand that's not always possible, so when on the buses, students and staff will be required to wear face coverings and maintain as much social distance as possible. Students will be assigned a seat, and members of the same household will sit together, and students are not permitted to alter from their scheduled morning and afternoon routes. This just gives a quick visual of what a bus might look like with 50% capacity. Buses will load from the front to the back, and they'll unload from the front, the back to the front, and unload from the front to the back. You can see the circles with the F's in them are with siblings who can sit together. So we have had a lot of typically asked questions, so I wanted to highlight some of those. What types of face coverings are recommended? So what face coverings are acceptable are cloth-based face coverings. They can be homemade. Disposable mask. Face coverings must cover both the mouth and the nose. And face shields without a mask do not meet CDC guidelines. We do plan on sending information home to families about some of the requirements for face coverings to help in planning for school. Bathrooms in the school will be cleaned and sanitized at least 3 times a day. We are asking families to complete the daily health questionnaire. We understand that sometimes people may forget. We're hoping that by doing it daily, everyone will be able to get into a routine, and it just becomes part of that morning routine. However, if there is a situation where families are consistently not completing the daily health screening, we will ask the student to then participate in our remote learning option. Chromebooks will be offered to families who prefer a remote learning option. We will be providing a time prior to school beginning for students to come and families to come and pick up Chromebooks. So I think that answers the next question as well. If a student does not feel safe or comfortable with in-person learning, how quickly can they switch to a remote option? It doesn't take, it's not that much of a challenge for a student who's on site to switch to remote. So we would simply need to be notified, and they should be able to switch to a remote option only within 24-hour period. However, if they do opt to switch to that remote option, we would ask that they remain in that option at least till the end of the quarter, which is our transition periods. We are working with Career and Technical Education, which is at the Capital Region BOCES, to determine what options are available to students in the fall. So if there are a significant number of children K-5 whose parents elect for remote learning option, yes, there would likely be an adjustment to the plan. Again, it could be something between models 1 or 2, and we would be able to provide that information once we have a better idea of how many families would like to participate in remote learning only. Is it true if a K-5 student enrolls in remote learning but chooses to return in person, they may not be assigned to their home school? That is a possibility, and I can just give an example to highlight why that might happen. If a student is currently enrolled in one of our classes on site and a parent opts to have that child participate in a remote option, let's say until the mid-year second quarter, and they want to come back on site, it is possible that we would have had a student register between that time period in that building, and they would be there in person. So we do have capacity limits because of social distancing. So if that were the case, the student who wants to return on campus may have to go to another elementary building if we're not able to safely accommodate the student in their home school. Students who need reading and math support will get support. Our reading teachers are all still available. They were not assigned to the classroom. And because our classroom sizes are significantly reduced this year in regards to the number of students in a classroom, we anticipate that there's only probably 1 or 2 students in every section who might need math support. And we're confident that the classroom teacher will be able to provide that support with the lesser number of students. Students who receive any related services through special education, yes, will receive those when school resumes, and that they will be provided regardless of whether or not the students are on site or in a remote setting. We are planning on looking to secure tents, so we'll have covered areas in all of our buildings, and looking at all other outdoor areas, of course, weather permitting, for class instruction or breaks during the day. One of the recommendations regarding ventilation is to increase outdoor air circulation. So we are looking to do that as much as possible, encouraging teachers and staff to open windows and doors when it's safe to do so. We do have a good ventilation system currently, and we have increased the flow of outside air from 10% to 22%. Students do not need to bring their lunch from home. We will have lunches available that students can pre-order through their homeroom teacher. Families will be encouraged to use My School Bucks to pay for lunch. Students I mentioned earlier in K-5 will eat in their classrooms, and middle and high school students will be eating in separate larger spaces, which allow for social distancing. Students who are in remote learning only option will be eligible for breakfast and lunch. And if students in the high school don't have a lunch period, we are working on alternatives for times when they will be allowed to still eat throughout the day. Students cannot sit with a friend on the bus, even if it's someone they had spent time together this summer. Only siblings will be sitting together on our buses. And no social distancing cannot be maintained on the school buses. That's why we're asking everyone to wear face covering, students and staff, and following as much social distancing as possible. So this is the last of our parent forum. We do have student forums that will be scheduled or are in the process of being scheduled, and parents are welcome to also participate in those. And our elementary buildings are all planning to offer forums, so you can ask specific questions to the buildings that your children attend. And I believe that's the last of it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I think we're ready to begin answering questions, Joellen, that came in.
We have a lot of questions, so let's get started. Can you clarify the schedule for the week of September 14th? In particular, what days K-6 students will actually be in school in person?
So K-6 on that Monday and Tuesday, K-6 will follow pretty much the same schedule that 7 through 12 will follow. So students who have the last name A through K will be on site, and L through Z will be participating remotely. And on Tuesday, students with last names L through Z will be on site, and A through K will be participating remotely. And that's really to help us with, that'll be the first time we have students on site. So for K through 6, it was to help reduce capacity in the classrooms, and also for arrival and dismissal for a couple days, and to make sure teachers could work with our students on all of the differences in the school buildings and in the classrooms. And beginning Wednesday, we go to the plan model that we have where K-6 is all on site, and 7-12 will be continuing with their alternating day schedule.
Okay. For kindergartners electing the virtual option, do you anticipate needing a parent sitting with the student, or is the intent that once connected, the parent will not be participating?
Well, judging from how the spring was with the closure, I think it'd be very difficult for a 5-year-old to participate in remote learning without an adult present to assist.
Okay. Can you provide more information, more detail on mask breaks and movement breaks?
So we recognize that students are going to be, in one location more frequently than they have been. They're going to be able to just move less freely around the building. So we're working with our teachers and obviously encouraging that they build those in whenever possible and whenever that makes sense. So that could be a walk outside, which we are encouraging, especially when weather is nice. Or we do have some locations in the building that are free that teachers could take their classes to. Mask breaks, I think that are going to be done in different ways. It could be when teachers take their classes outside. They could certainly say this would be a great time for a mask break. Lunch when students are eating would be a mask break. And I would also say that just generally educating kids about when they need to take a break easily, they could step out into the hallway for a minute, take their mask off. It doesn't have to always be a scheduled event that I think we all know as adults wearing masks, there's times that you feel like you just need a breather. So we want to make sure that students understand that they can do that as well.
Okay, so for kindergartners and other younger students coming in, how will social distancing look? How will it be enforced? And will there be any visuals for families regarding social distancing?
Yeah, Diana, I know that at the elementary, we've talked about a lot of visuals and things, so maybe you want to speak to that?
Sure. Whoever wrote that question was definitely reading our mind, because we will be using lots of visuals, probably even physical visuals like pool noodles and hula hoops to show what 6 feet looks like. In the elementary, we're just going to have to practice a lot. We're going to have to practice our systems and routines like we always do, but in this case, our new systems and routines require social distancing. So it's not going to be perfect, but I think with the visuals and the training and the practice, we'll definitely get there. And they'll just need lots of reminders along the way as well.
So just to clarify, that all students, so the expectation is that they'll have face coverings on all day, even at their desks.
Unless they are eating.
Right.
When they're eating snack or lunch, they will have them on at recess as well. But again, just like Jody said, there will be lots of times where we can have kiddos step aside and take breaks if they need a mask break. And we'll be helping them do that at the elementary school.
Could somebody describe what band and choir might look like, maybe at every level?
So choir and band, I should say, at the beginning of the year with decent weather, we're looking to have that outside. Well, at the elementary, we're not looking to have choir at the beginning of the year. At the secondary level, we are looking to potentially have choir and band outside with still 12 feet distancing. I think I know that at our secondary level for choir, the teachers are planning on alternate activities that don't include singing as part of that. I think when we get inside 12-foot distancing, there is concern still. I know our school physician has expressed concern about singing and playing band instruments inside with 12 feet distancing. So he was hoping to speak to someone at the Department of Health and get some clarification on that. So that will be a work in progress. But just given the fact there's 12 feet social distancing, will certainly limit the number of students who could be in any space at any one time to begin with.
Okay, I have a health question. And the question itself is, how will you handle the time lag between a student showing symptoms and getting back a COVID test result, which could be several days, in regards to whether to have the remainder of the class continue coming to school versus isolating until the test results are in? So maybe Joanne could talk a little bit about, if a student does present with symptoms, what happens? If a student, is required to be tested, then what happens?
Okay, so we would, if there is a suspected case of COVID or any communicable disease at this point, we would be communicating directly with Department of Health and our school physician, who will determine our course of action, which is most appropriate for our situation. They will most likely make recommendations, and we do have procedures in place for cleaning and disinfection of an area following a suspected or confirmed case of COVID. So we'll look to the Department of Health regarding those measures. They will also help us know what we need to do regarding any possible closure, whether it's closure of an area within our building or whether it's closure of the school for a short-term basis, as they gain a better understanding of the situation and how it impacts us. So I guess we'll be looking to them. They are the public health authorities. They will help guide us in every step of the way. We are very fortunate to have a wonderful relationship with Department of Health, and we greatly appreciate their guidance. And if there is a need to do, and there would be, contact tracing potentially, then we would look to support DOH in every way possible. We'll look at where our kids are and who that particular individual had contact with while they were on the school campus, as Jody had mentioned earlier.
Okay, thanks, Joanne. Will the school day change to accommodate staggered arrivals? Is that something that might happen when staggered arrivals become a thing? I don't think.
Yeah, maybe Diana, you want to address that? I think they're probably referring to the elementary that I talked about, the 20-minute difference. So
sure,
what that looks like at Eagle.
Yeah, our staggered arrival here, what we're thinking at this point, and really it's also going to depend a little bit on how many parents choose to drive, because and pick up, that's obviously going to affect my arrival and dismissal. It would be about a 10-minute difference. So we're not talking about staggered like some other districts that are like a whole hour later and then they end later. So here in Bethlehem, we'll be starting right around the same time and ending at the same time. So it's just going to be 10 minutes either way. And I believe there was another question that went with this one about, doesn't that cut into the school day and instruction? And definitely it does. And so does the mask breaks and all of that. So we have been working together to prioritize our curriculum to make sure that teachers are teaching the most important things, and we're also keeping everyone safe. So very little stagger, just about 10 minutes. So it shouldn't affect anybody's schedule too much.
So we have a question about how this family would like to know, how were the maximum capacities determined for classrooms? So, how was that figured?
So even though I showed that diagram with the different, square feet and how many desks could fit in, we actually physically had to go to every classroom to assess that, because some classrooms have, shelving that's built in, which takes away from where desks can be. Some classrooms, depending upon the layout, required a change for where the teacher might have to be. So it really was going through every classroom. And some classrooms we actually are having to make modifications to in order to maximize the distancing. And I think Eagle is probably a perfect example of that. So maybe, Diana, you can just share what your custodians are doing to change the whole cubby layout, because that was taking up a lot of space in your classrooms.
Sure. So at Eagle, we have this, when you walk in, we have cubbies along the wall, and then we have like a cubbies on the other side, which we call the island of cubbies because you can go around them. And it's a great visual barrier for when you're in the classroom teaching, you don't see all of the coats and all the messiness. So that island, that's why it was designed that way. The island is going to come out, and we're going to put it along the back wall a little bit. So we will have less hooks and less cubbies, but we do have less children. And then we did literally go in and put desks every spot that we could. And that is why we do need the masks on at all times, because there isn't a large area for the teacher to be like 10 or 12 feet or even 6 feet back. The teacher, there's no teacher desks. There's no round small group areas anymore. It's just the kiddos 6 feet apart. And each classroom, you're right, Jody, depended on like what was in it, on how many you could fit, whether you could fit like anywhere from 16 to about 19.
Right.
So will there be small group instruction then?
Not physically, like we won't be able to, unless we have loose site, like movable barriers that we can bring somewhere. In the elementary buildings right now, there's no table to do the small group, but some of them have back counters that they might be able to do some small group, or they could do some virtual small group as well. So that is something that we will be definitely trying to figure out from day one, what's the best way we can differentiate and keep everyone safe.
Yeah, and in situations where teachers do want to work more closely, whether it's one-to-one with students, and that would happen frequently with related service providers, or a small group, there are, as Diana mentioned, looking at the plastic barriers to provide an additional level of protection, which is what students and staff who are currently in our summer program for special education are utilizing some of those additional PPE things. So it is possible. It's just trying to figure out with every classroom how that's going to work.
Okay. Do we know, Joanne, about what types of masks will be allowed, if you wanted to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, as Jody had mentioned, we will be providing guidance to families on face coverings. As was mentioned earlier, the requirements are that they completely cover both the mouth and the nose, that they fit snugly but comfortably against the sides of the face. They're secured with ties or loops, and that it's recommended that they include multiple layers of fabric. I know our school physician is recommending that they be at minimum 3 layers of fabric. So we're waiting to get more guidance in that way. But also we have to make sure that the facial coverings are you're able to breathe easily through them without any type of restriction, and that they can be washed and dried without damage or change to the shape. Although DOH and CDC does say that bandanas can be used, our school physician is just again concerned about the limited amount of layering of the fabric with a bandana depending upon how it's worn. So again, guidance will come regarding that. I do know that our school physician is not recommending any valve mask because he believes that they defeat the purpose of a face covering, and that they allow viral particles to be released out of the valve, so it can potentially put others at risk. So again, we'll provide specific written guidance regarding face coverings very soon.
Okay, and maybe you covered this, I'm sorry, but will students be required to wear masks outside?
Yes, that is the recommendation, is that students wear and staff wear face coverings at all times. it's required that they wear them when they.
This says in the initial presentation, Assistant Superintendent Dave Hurst said students would see more of the type of grading they are used to seeing going forward, but with room for modifications. Can you explain that a little further?
Yeah, actually, I was just typing an answer to all three parts of that question.
Sorry.
So let me start. I did not say, I don't believe I said modifications. The word I believe I used was flexibility. We're not changing the grading structure. It's more teachers would have the flexibility in terms of deadlines, knowing that students are here, on an every other day basis. Some students respond much better to when they're actually in person. So teachers have the flexibility to, focus more of their grading on when students are actually here. That might also mean that, tests are given on 2 consecutive days so that the students are always taking assessments while they're on site. Again, that's not to say that all teachers are going to do it that way, but there's just flexibility built in to the way grading might look, not modification, but flexibility. And then there was another question embedded within there too about January Regents exams. As of right now, our courses that take January Regents exams, that's still the plan. But after students return to campus and teachers have had a chance to work with those students, if we determine that they'd be better served by holding off until June to take that exam, we can certainly do that. That would apply to not only Algebra 2, but we also have living environment in the lab school that does the same thing. So we do have flexibility to wait until June should teachers determine they need some extra time.
Okay. Thank you. We have several questions regarding social interaction between students. So social interaction is an important experience for children for mental health and education. How do you assure children will be able to interact given the restrictions the school has set up?
Well, there's no doubt that some things that in the past were permitted won't be permitted, but I do think that students are still in the classroom. They're still with their teacher who will be encouraging definitely social interactions in lots of different ways. Our school counselors at the elementary, our coordinated care teams, have been working on plans to provide social and emotional supports in the classroom as we transition back to the school year. So although some of the activities may look different, the students are still in the classroom with their peers and the teacher will still engage them appropriately with their peers. It'll just, some of the activities will have to be limited, but that doesn't mean that students won't be interacting socially during the school day.
This is a question that keeps coming up, and I know it was part of the presentation, but I think it's so important. Can you just, is the remote learning option open to all families? And if so, when do families need to notify the district?
So the remote learning option is available to all families. We will be sending a communication out later today asking families, there's going to be a form that's attached to that or part of that if a family wants to do remote only, they would submit it, fill out the form, it would come back to the district. And so we can see how many students that would apply to. In the deadline, we're asking families to commit to that by August 15th. Because that does make a difference in our planning in regards to the number of students who we have on site. That impacts our schedule and the number of students we need to plan for in a remote environment.
Okay, thank you. Can you give some details about the professional development teachers will get regarding teaching virtually versus in person at the same time? And also, how and when will teachers be cleaning the classroom desks and materials?
So I'll take the cleaning piece first, and then I'll let Dave talk about the training, because teachers were offered training also in the spring with the closure. So there won't be a whole lot that's new to that, but we'll be providing an appropriate cleaner in the classrooms. It disinfects for teachers. So when they have students in their classroom and they transition out and a new group of students coming in, they can spray it on the desk, and it has to sit for just a minute, and then they can wipe it down. They could also use that on any other surfaces, if they wanted to wipe down, obviously, a doorknob or light switch or something like that. But it is an appropriate disinfectant. We'll be providing them to all classrooms so that they can use them, as much as they would like. I know some teachers may want to use it in other areas in the classroom as well. And then I'll let Dave answer some of the professional development that we've offered, and also what we have planned in the summer as we begin the school year.
Yeah, so last March, we began offering PD right away once we were in the shutdown mode. Over the summer, we've also been sending out self-directed modules for teachers to follow, should they choose. We have our tech coaches and our instructional tech specialists who are offering virtual sessions throughout the summer. We also have our fourth annual tech boot camp coming up August 11th and 12th, which will be virtual this year. But in some ways that offers more flexibility, in that normally we have to limit the number of sessions we can run just due to space and instructor capacity. Now that it's virtual, we can actually offer many more sessions. Right now we've got 60 or so sessions planned to run over the course of those 2 days, sort of a mix of synchronous and asynchronous activities. And then we also have the 3 superintendent conference days prior to school beginning in September, where our tech coaches and tech instructional specialists and within departments will be doing even further training. So there's no shortage of training this summer for sure.
And that screenshot that was in the PowerPoint that I just shared of the teacher in the classroom with the screen and kids were at home and some were on site, that's actually just a screenshot of a training video that was sent out to all staff on how to use the technology, the microphone and things such as that, how to position yourself in the classroom. So that was made available, I think, last week to all of our faculty.
Okay, I have a couple of special education questions. The first, my son has an IEP where he's scheduled to receive individual physical therapy at the elementary level. If we choose remote learning, what will happen with that? Will he still be eligible for services when he returns to in-person learning?
So yes, he would still be eligible for physical therapy when he returned to in-person learning. I know that that's a challenge to try and do it remotely. I know that our physical therapist did provide some resources for parents to do some things while at home. But just because a parent chooses remote, we wouldn't remove that from an IEP, that when they return on site, obviously those services would resume.
Okay, and what would a resource room look like for a 6th grader?
So whatever is on the IEP, a student would still receive that level of support. I believe because 6th grade, the schedule is changed. It's not a period. It is a period by period, but it's not the same structure we had in place. It was similar to 7 through 12, is that students would be missing a special in order to get resource room. And obviously the special education department would be in touch with parents to let them know about that.
For K-6, is there an option of doing in-person instruction 2 days a week and remote learning the rest of the week?
Say that again. I'm not really sure I understand.
So I believe, and it's a short question, but I believe this is, and we've received a few email questions that are similar. Is there a choice of doing in-person instruction only part of the week if for K-6 students, or is it all in-person or all remote?
Yes, it's all in-person or all remote.
Okay. Let me see, hang on. Okay, so if a child needs to be dismissed for a doctor's appointment, will the child be escorted out of the building? do parents still need to come in to sign out the child? And can you explain a little bit about, how that will occur?
I think each building would probably look a little different depending upon where the main office is, where the parents would pick up. But parents would meet their child outside and not have to come into the building. So I don't know if maybe Diana or Dave Domel, you can just talk through what you're thinking that process would look like in the high school and an elementary building to give people an idea.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I at the high school, obviously, it'd be much different than the elementary school. We would have students. We're going to have a monitor as always that will be in the front of the building, and they would report to the monitor, and the monitor would confirm that the rider or person picking up is there and release them from there. So it would look pretty similar to kind of what we do now at the high school already.
At elementary school, we would have an adult walk the child out to the car. I don't know. We really haven't thought about whether or not they have to really sign out, but we would have to make sure that the person picking up the child is obviously mom or dad or someone that is in our Aspen system. So we might have to ask for ID at that point if it's somebody else, just like we would at the main office, but we'd be doing that all outside.
Okay. All right. Thank you. For families choosing remote learning, will teachers engage with parents on a regular basis to explain curriculum and check in via Zoom and not just through email regarding what is working and what is not?
Dave, you want to?
I mean, there's no plan to do that right now. That's no different than when we have in-person learning. Teachers, as parents have concerns, they should reach out directly to the teacher. But as general practice, when we're in person, teachers don't hold sort of mass parent meetings outside of the open house. Everything else is handled on an individual basis. Really, at the secondary level, students should really kind of advocate for themselves and navigate the curriculum themselves and communicate directly with their parents. And if the parents don't feel like they're getting a complete picture or accurate information from their students, I would encourage them to reach out directly to the teacher. But we're not going to be hosting Zoom sessions for parents, no.
Okay. I have a couple of questions regarding face coverings. And I don't know if, Joanne, if you had included this in the last answer regarding appropriate face coverings, but will face gaiters be allowed? So the ones that you pull up from your neck up over your face.
Our school physician had expressed concern regarding those as well because they can fall down. And that's why the guidance recommends that there's some sort of, secured behind the ear with either loops or some sort of tie. And also the fact that they may not be multi-layered enough. So again, we'll look to DOH, who we've also been consulting with regarding face coverings, and with our school physician, and we will provide guidance to everyone regarding things like bandanas and gaiters and other types of options for face coverings.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there a plan to address increased traffic in parking lots at the middle school and high school at drop-off and dismissal?
I think that we're not really sure about the traffic flow because we will have 50% less kids coming. So that may reduce some of that. But I know, Dave, you look like you were going to respond to the high school specifically. So maybe if you want to talk about what you're considering for that.
Yeah, we've been talking about some different options. So there will be some guidelines coming out, or some we're going to be making some requests about different drop-off options, and like Jody said, having 50% is obviously going to be a huge help. But we are definitely going to have some different procedures that or requests that we're going to be asking from parents.
And I think just to kind of piggyback on that in general, arrival and dismissal, we're planning some different scenarios, but until we actually see what traffic flow looks like, how many families are able to transport their own students versus, riding the buses, we'll likely have to make some adjustments as we begin the year. Hopefully they won't have to be, I don't think they're going to have to be too drastic, but if everyone just is patient while we kind of work through those first couple of weeks, I think we can get down a system that works pretty efficiently. It might be more efficient than the traffic flow patterns we have currently.
Okay. Let's see. Do we know what types of cleaners and disinfectants will be used in the classrooms? Do we know sort of the names of the products, or is that something that we can post to the website?
We do have that information. I think, Joanne, you're probably most familiar with an Alpha cleaner or something.
Right. Alpha HP, a multi-surface disinfectant cleaner will be used at the elementary level, where they're able to have a longer contact time, whereas at the secondary buildings, when they have to clean more frequently between students, they're using Oxyvir, which, as Jody mentioned, is a 1-minute contact time. So those are the products that will be used, and I'm sure that we can provide information regarding those if anyone has questions. I do know from Greg Nolte, who is in charge of operations and maintenance, that these are items that were previously approved through the green cleaning program, in a sense that, for individuals who may have allergies and so forth, they are safe to be used. And they're also on the list from the EPA and DOH regarding their effectiveness against coronavirus at this point that we can be using in the school setting. So that is good too.
Okay, let's see. We have a question about Chromebooks, so I think it's probably a good idea to revisit how students will get their Chromebooks. So this is particularly for kindergarten students. Can you clarify if kindergarten students will be provided with a Chromebook, and do parents need to purchase one?
Kindergartners are actually going to get iPads. So all kindergarten students will receive iPads. All students grades 1 through 12 will receive Chromebooks. And the distribution of those devices will take place before the opening of school. And a schedule of pickup times is being developed. And once we have that, it'll be communicated out and parents will be able to come in and pick up the devices. Realizing that many of the secondary grade level students already have their devices. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. All right. I have a question. This may be for Dave Domel. When will parking lot passes be available to high school students who can drive?
Yeah, we'll be making those available in the upcoming weeks. We're actually going to be trying to do everything electronically this year. There'll be pickup times for the passes where students can come grab their passes. So it's going to look a little different, but our front office clerical staff, they're actually working on, making payment and the permits and everything, registration, I should say, be digital and online right now. So that'll be coming out, and it should be, everything's the same, except we're going to limit, obviously, coming into the building.
Okay, thank you. So this has to do with bus transportation. Given the uncertainty of when coronavirus issues will come to an end, is it okay to sign up a student for transportation and not take the buses until, the pandemic is over?
The only thing I would say to that, it would be better for our planning purposes and transportation to know who is actually going to take the bus to begin the year. I'm not sure, if it's 1 or 2 families. So you can, if you're eligible for our school transportation, you can let our transportation department know at any time you want to take advantage of that. So there's no, restriction in terms of if you wanted to begin the year with transporting your own children, and then, come November, you needed our school transportation, we're obligated to provide that. So it would be more helpful for our planning purposes if you're not planning to use it, that you let us know that, knowing that if you qualify for transportation, you can always opt into that service.
Okay. All right. At the high school, will construction be complete by the beginning of the school year? And specifically, will the construction workers be gone? If not, when will they be gone?
Most of the construction should be done. There is still an area of the building at the high school that there will still be some continued construction. But when we have students and staff in the building, construction workers would not be in working during that time. Obviously, there's far too many things going on. So we do, just like we've done in the past, when we have schools in session, contractors typically work outside of the school day or on weekends to finish up work that's needed. But the majority of the work will be done by the start of the school year.
Okay. Will entryway doors still be closed and locked for safety reasons? And can you talk a little bit about safety drills in the coming year?
So we are planning, when we think about arrival and dismissal, we are planning to use more entrances and exits for safety and to ease congestion. So in the past, where we've asked people to come in through one or two doors, that will not be the case this year. There will be more availability to get into the building. During the school day, we would still have doors locked for security purposes. But we are looking at if there's, for transitioning, for example, between class periods at the secondary level, if we can safely have students move between hallways outside, then that may be an option. So again, the doors would still remain locked, but we would have adults there to supervise. In regards to safety drills, New York State did indicate that we're required to still do those. So we'll try to do those. We can do them sometimes without students here or with limited students involved. For lockdown drills, instead of having students have to kind of huddle in the corner, which is what the typical protocol is, we are allowed to have them stay at their desk and just go through the procedures with them. But the drills are still required.
Okay, so we had a couple of questions on this. For students in the remote learning, why are they being excluded from participating in extracurricular activities or sports?
Well, they're not, if we have virtual extracurricular activities, they're able to participate in those, just like our students here. But if a student is in remote learning and they're not on site, then obviously there's safety and health concerns. So having them come after school and then mixing with students they're not typically with is not best practice from a health and safety standpoint. So that's why, and again, sports are not starting. At the late earliest would be by September 21st. And we still have no further guidance on that. And co-curricular activities, again, are not happening unless they're virtual.
Okay. A question, will members of the same household, i.e. twins, in the same classroom be allowed to sit together within that classroom?
You'd sit together.
It says in the classroom.
So I suppose, Jody, if we had twins, we are trying to keep twins in the elementary in the same classroom, just for the ease of the parents in case we do go remotely and they only have to keep track of one teacher. I didn't think, but they probably could sit next to each other. But we still would have the 6 feet between them, just right. More, I think, as a practice. Like that's our procedures, and to help everyone practice that.
Right.
I think.
Okay, I have a question about transportation and students receiving special education services. So this says, thinking of the kindergartners and those specifically needing special education services, I have two questions. they will be new to riding the bus, and some may need to be buckled in because they don't know how. I believe there used to be a program on buses to pair up youngest and oldest to sit together and help with some of this. I know this from my older son. However, my younger son will be going to Ellesmere, will not be riding with his sibling. Now that buses are 50% sitting alone, will there be an aid to buckle in my children who don't know how? So if not, will you provide this safety measure?
Yeah, so aids are only on buses with students who have IEP needs, but we do have a bus safety or bus kind of a training team that works with our incoming case students. I don't know if Diana, if any of that's scheduled yet for the transportation.
I don't think it's scheduled yet, but it is. I did see an email that they are going to be scheduling it. Yeah. And my suggestion would be to practice with your child as much as possible, because even with the drop off or the pickup in the cars, we aren't going to allow parents to get out. We really need to keep it moving because I think there'll be many more cars. So practicing as much at home would be great, would be a big help on our part.
Right. But we do have it's called the BEAT team. I think that may be what the parent is referring to.
Yeah.
So they will be doing programs for incoming kindergarten students on bus safety and go over all of that information.
Okay. Another special education question. Will students be able to have a face-to-face speech assessment since it was unable to be completed remotely?
Evaluation, assuming is what they're referring to. So yeah, evaluations are happening now. So if there's a concern about an evaluation that didn't happen, I would suggest the parent contact the special education department to make sure that that is set to take place.
Okay. And I believe this is regarding arrival and dismissal at the elementary level. What will the safety protocols be? What will be the safety protocols related to schools out staff in the elementary buildings? I apologize. In the AM and PM, how many staff will be there? Do we know?
I don't know how many staff will be there. I would imagine it would depend on the number of students who are in there. But I know I have spoken to Jane Maloney a few different times, and they have to pretty much follow the same guidance that we do. So their staff has to have training. They have to participate in pretty much the same protocols that we do. We will make sure that those areas that they are in locations of the building that our students will not be going into right away. And those areas will be cleaned appropriately when they leave every day. Okay. If a K-5 student receiving in-person instruction gets sick, first of all, will they need a COVID test before returning to school? And I think, Joanne, you may have already answered that. But the second part of the question is, and will they be able to participate in distance learning while awaiting results or being quarantined?
Okay, I did answer that question in another form, but not directly today. The decision on whether a test is needed to be done or will be determined by the child's healthcare provider or possibly the local health department, but it will not be determined. We will not state to a parent that your child has to be tested before they're able to return to school. It is confusing because many of the symptoms of COVID we know are also common with other childhood illnesses like the common cold and flu and so forth. So the overlap does cause some concern. So we will work with you and we would ask you as parents to communicate with the school nurses on any concerns regarding your child's health, especially if they have chronic health conditions such as asthma and allergies. So we don't want to exclude your child unnecessarily from school if there's a chronic health condition causing the concern. So again, we just ask for communication with you, the parent, but again, going back to if we we send your child home with a health concern, and we go through and assess and determine that there's reason enough here that we would ask you to follow up with a healthcare provider. We will follow up with you on that, but we will not require that you have a test. So any questions regarding that come up throughout the year, please call your building nurse and talk that through.
And to follow up on this, the second part of that, if a child is awaiting test results and they have to stay home, or they're ordered to quarantine as well, and they're physically, able to participate in a remote option, we would certainly try to make it. Shouldn't be a problem for us to accommodate that.
Okay. How will teachers handle a child who isn't wearing their mask properly?
This has come up in every forum where a student refuses to wear a mask. And I think a large part of it does come down to education. We will be asking families to help us with this prior to the start of school. And I know just out and about in the community, I've seen more and more children with masks on, going into certain areas. So that's, I think, great to get them used to wearing a mask and helping them to understand the importance of it and keeping everybody safe. In large part, I think most students will be very cooperative and understanding. And, I see really young kids wearing masks. And I think trying to help them, find some maybe fun in it. They have a favorite superhero, or they like certain colors or things such as that can also make it easier for children. So we want to look at it in terms of, if there's a child who's having a struggle with a mask, how can we work with families to help them be more comfortable with it and make sure that they understand the importance of everyone's safety, not just their own. And I really think that most students will be really cooperative. If there's a student who just refuses, even after we've made attempts to try and help them and work with the families, we would then ask that the student participate in our remote learning option, because that does present a health and safety risk to a lot of people.
Okay, all right. Well, we're getting, I think, to the end of our time here. So I'm just looking to see if and I know we have some questions we didn't get to, and I was trying to get around to each person. Let's see. Okay. It was just said that parents will not be allowed to get out of the car to help their child out. My child is still in a 5-point harness car seat. It's impossible for her to release herself to get out of the car without help. Will there be school staff who are there to help children getting in and out of the cars?
So we will have lots and lots more staff to helping. It probably would be something we have to think through at each building. Maybe there is a spot where you can pull over and help your child, but the traffic can keep flowing. So really good question that we'll just have to think about, but we'll figure out a way that we can accommodate everyone. So no worries. I understand that for the kiddos that are still in the boosters.
Okay. Thank you, Diana.
Do we have any final questions, Joellen, before we wrap up?
We have had a few regarding music, and this one final question: when will music instrument lessons start, and how will we cope with virtual learning with those lessons?
So that lessons in music, we're still really working on. I think the spacing is somewhat problematic, and also the concerns about indoor activity with that. So that's something that we will continue to work through. We're working through it with our school physician and our music teachers in the Department of Health. So as soon as we have more guidance on that, we can share that out, but we just don't have it right now.
Okay. Yeah, and I think so. For the remainder of the questions, I have them all copied down. All questions will be answered in one form or another through our frequently asked questions, and if there are specific questions, we can certainly answer those via email. We have many emails that we've received at districtoffice@bethlehemschools.org. And all of those emails will be replied to. And so if people want to share any other thoughts or questions, that way they can.
Yeah, and I just want to thank all my colleagues this is the third forum you've had for all families, and thank them also for all the hard work in getting our reopening plans where they are. Although we still have some unanswered questions, I think that we have a lot of good plans in place. And for our families, I just want to say thanks so much for all of your support and your flexibility and patience as we kind of get through some of these challenging times. And again, as Joellen said, if you have further questions, please let us know. We will be sending further communications out in regards to schools reopening. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be sending out today the information and request to let us know if you prefer a remote option. And just thanks so much for all of your support during these challenging times. And please contact us if you have further questions. So I hope everyone has a great day today.
Thank you.
Thanks.